America did not hate Cuba because Cuba was dangerous. America hated Cuba because Cuba stopped being profitable. The moment Cuba nationalized American sugar plantations, casinos, utilities, and oil refineries, and handed them back to the Cuban people, Washington made a decision that 11 million civilians are still paying for today. 60 years later. Not 60 days. Not 60 months. 60 years of economic war against an island the size of Tennessee. And the documents proving exactly who authorized it and why have been sitting in American archives for decades. Before the revolution, Cuba was one of America's most valuable possessions. Not a colony in name, but a colony in practice. American corporations owned 40% of Cuban sugar land. American companies controlled Cuban utilities, electricity, telephone, railways. The American mafia, with the full knowledge and protection of Fulgencio Batista's U.S.-backed government, ran Havana's casino industry like a private empire. Meyer Lansky, Santos Traficante Jr., two of the most powerful organized crime figures in American history, operated freely in Havana, paying Batista directly for the privilege. Batista took the money. Washington looked away. Because the arrangement worked. American corporations extracted Cuban wealth. American tourists spent freely in Havana. The mafia laundered money through the casinos. And ordinary Cubans, the sugar workers, the dock workers, the rural farmers, lived in poverty on the island that was making everyone else rich. On January 1st, 1959, that arrangement ended. Fidel Castro's revolutionary forces entered Havana. Batista fled to the Dominican Republic with an estimated $300 million in stolen Cuban funds. Within 18 months, the new Cuban government had nationalized every major American corporate holding on the island. The sugar plantations, the utilities, the oil refineries, the casinos, everything American corporations had extracted wealth from for decades, returned to Cuban state control. The American government's response was not negotiation. It was not diplomacy. It was war by other means. In February 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed the executive order imposing a full trade embargo on Cuba. No American goods could be sold to Cuba. No Cuban goods could enter America. No American company could do business with Cuba. And under legislation passed later, no foreign company that did business with Cuba could also do business with America. The entire weight of the American economy used as a weapon against 11 million people. Kennedy presented it publicly as a response to Cuban communism and Soviet alignment. What the declassified documents show is that the planning began before Cuba formally aligned with the Soviet Union. It began the moment the sugar companies called Washington. The CIA under Allen Dulles, who had already orchestrated the removal of Iran's Mossadegh and Guatemala's Jacobo Arbenz, launched Operation Mongoose, a secret program of economic sabotage, biological attacks on Cuban crops, and documented assassination attempts against Castro. Fabian Escalante, head of Cuban state security, later documented over 600 assassination attempts against Castro authorized by American intelligence across multiple administrations. 600. Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan. Every American president from 1961 onward inherited and continued the same institutional project. The men behind it were not rogue operators. They were senior CIA officials following policies set at the highest levels of American government. Richard Helms, CIA director under Johnson and Nixon, personally oversaw multiple Cuba destabilization operations. William Harvey, the CIA officer who ran Operation Mongoose, later testified about the assassination programs before the Senate Intelligence Committee. These are not allegations. These are confirmed testimony in American government records. Meanwhile, inside Cuba, something complicated was happening. The revolution delivered real gains for ordinary Cubans. The literacy campaign of 1961 taught over 1 million Cubans to read in a single year. UNESCO confirmed Cuba achieved near universal literacy, one of the highest rates in Latin America. Cuba built one of the most sophisticated public healthcare systems in the developing world despite the embargo. Cuban doctors were being sent on international medical missions to Africa, Latin America, and Asia while Cuba itself was under economic siege. A country under 60 years of sanctions producing more doctors per capita than almost any nation on earth. But the Cuban government was not without its own failures. Political dissidents were imprisoned. Press freedom was suppressed. Cubans who criticized the government faced consequences that had nothing to do with American sanctions. Raul Castro, who assumed the presidency in 2008, maintained the same one-party system his brother had built. Miguel Diaz-Canel, Cuba's current president, has faced accusations of using the same political repression tools against protesters that the government has used for decades. The July 2021 protests, the largest in Cuba in decades, were met with arrests, trials, and prison sentences for demonstrators. Some of those sentences exceeded 20 years for participation in a street protest. That is not America's doing. That is a government choosing repression over accountability. The Cuban people deserve the truth about both the 60 years of American economic war and the Cuban government's own failure to protect its people's rights. Both things are true at the same time. In 2015, Barack Obama and Raul Castro made history. Diplomatic relations restored. Travel restrictions loosened. The possibility of an end to the longest embargo in modern history. For 2 years, ordinary Cubans felt something they had not felt in decades. The possibility of normal. Then in 2017, Donald Trump reversed every Obama-era opening. Sanctions tightened again. Travel restricted again. Foreign companies penalized again. In 2021, the Biden administration kept most of the Trump-era Cuba sanctions in place. In the same year, the UN General Assembly voted 184-2 condemning the American embargo. 184 nations. 2 voted to continue it. America and Israel. Today, Cuban families survive on remittances sent from relatives abroad. Cuban pharmacies have empty shelves. Cuban hospitals perform surgery with improvised equipment. Not because Cuba is incapable, because for 60 years the most powerful economy on earth has systematically ensured that Cuba cannot buy, sell, or trade its way to stability. On this page we have already named names. Batista, Meyer Lansky, Santos Traficante, Alan Dulles, Richard Helms, William Harvey. We named Marcos and Imelda in the Philippines, Abacha and Diazani in Nigeria, the men behind Operation Ajax in Iran, the generals who took CIA money to overthrow Ghana. We are not done naming names, and we are about to go deeper than we have ever gone before. More research, more documents, more stories. We are the #1 factual history page on the internet right now. Not opinion, not conspiracy. Documents, records, verified evidence. Share this video right now. Tell me where you are watching from, and tell us which country you want us to expose next. We choose from the comments. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, search official The Odd Archive, and turn on notifications. Follow this page. Share, because what we have kept off this page until now is the part that will change how you see everything.